And as you can see, I am a certified adult, which makes me superlatively qualified to speak to you tonight about what comes next after graduation. If you've just graduated, congratulations. If you are looking forward to graduation, hopefully I can be of some help in clearing up some things and making it so that it doesn't feel so scary. And if you've been out in the world for a while and you're just looking for more wisdom, hello, welcome, and I'm excited to be chatting with you again. So The Girl's Guide is a book that I wrote when I was in my 20s. I was in a job, I was working for a women's media company, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that I was pretty good at giving advice. I had been writing an advice column, but I felt like there weren't really any books that were geared towards me that were actually addressing the questions that I had about my life. You know, what was my next career move? Did I want to get married? How was I going to make any money? How was I going to make friends after college? And there were a lot of books out at the time that seemed like they were offering up like a lot of cliches. And after a while, I got tired of reading all of these books that said, like, you go girl, like you can do anything, but didn't actually give any practical advice for how to do anything, and decided to write a book myself. And that's how The Girl's Guide was born. It was originally published in 2007 as The Girl's Guide to Absolutely Everything, and then I rewrote it, revised it, and updated it, and it came out again about a year and a half ago. And I was very excited that it was the graduation gift for graduating Kappas in 2017. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is careers and work. It's probably a huge thing on your mind, whether you're still in school or you've graduated. The question that I always come back to when I think about where I was, you know, in my 20s and when I was just starting out is what I thought I was going to be when I grew up. And that, you know, goes back to when I was a child, but also when I was in college. You know, I was an English and French major. I didn't really know what I was going to do with that. I thought I could be a teacher. I had ideas of what people with certain majors did. If you were a psychology major, you know, you were going to probably become a psychologist of some sort. You know, it seemed like I had to be on some kind of career path, and I never really knew what that was. So I remember having a lot of plans, but not a lot of idea for how I was going to put those plans into action. So the reason that things feel so weird when we're graduating or we're embarking on a new chapter in our lives is because uncertainty is scary. And when you're graduating college, there's a ton of uncertainty. You're going from, you know, pretty much, depending on your circumstances, having most things provided for you, having structure in your life, having a built-in group of friends, being fairly certain that, you know, the people that you're hanging out with are people that you trust, and then you generally move out of that really sheltered place into a world where no things are certain, and not only are those sort of fundamental things not there, you are suddenly greeted with a host of new questions and things to be uncertain about, like how do I, you know, figure out where to get an apartment? What if I don't make any friends there? How am I supposed to find a gynecologist? These are all things that can make going out into the world feel a little bit odd and a little bit scary. So when you're thinking about like what your job is going to be, certainly that uncertainty feels scary too. So good news, your first job probably won't be your dream job. Wait, that's not the good news, that's the cold hard fact. The good news is your first job probably won't be your last job, and that's the important thing to remember, which is that just because you take a job doing something that isn't exactly what you thought you'd be doing when you graduated, that doesn't mean that you're stuck doing whatever that thing is for life. In fact, your job at any point in your life doesn't have to be your last job. You can decide that you're going to embark on a particular path, and you can decide 10, 20, 30 years in that it's not for you, and you can change your mind. So you don't you don't have to worry that you're going to make a step that's going to lock you into some sort of indentured servitude to a career that you don't have any interest in, or that isn't exploiting your talents. So that's something really important to keep in mind. So you've probably been given a lot of advice on how social networks can hurt you when you're graduating college. You get lots of advice about, like, make sure there are no pictures of you out there doing anything untoward, or make sure you don't tweet something that could get you in trouble, or or you're told it's a really good way to stay in touch with your friends from kindergarten. And this is all true, but what's also true is that social networks are really, really valuable for finding a job. It's incredibly important when you're graduating that you have that you set up a profile on LinkedIn, even if you have no job history. It's not a particularly sophisticated social network, but it is where recruiters and people who are hiring sort of look to find the official record of you, where it says, that where you went to college, what you majored in, what jobs you've had, what clubs you've been in, that you were a loyal Kappa all through school. People look at these things and they get a sense of who you are from there. As I said before, of course, you're going to want to clean up your digital reputation, and if you haven't done so already, we're all pretty savvy about this stuff, but making sure that there aren't photos of you drinking, because that could put off a potential employer, or there aren't, that you're portraying yourself in a way that makes you seem like somebody who's hireable. So, that you decide what that is, but that you feel good about the fact that somebody who's interested in meeting you would Google you and see what's online about you and still want to meet you. The sort of 4 main commandments that I have for any job are be early, be humble, don't gossip, and put your phone away. These are all really, really important things, and they sound sort of simple, but there's more to each of them. By be early, I mean just be on time, and when you're at work, be at work. You don't have to be the first one there, but be there before your boss. And when you be on time to meetings, be conscientious about keeping your word. All of these things that sort of make a good human being, or what make a good employee. And it's so important when you're starting out and you're first meeting people that you're kind of taking all of those things into account. The second thing is be humble. You have accomplished quite a bit in your life so far, and you're walking into a situation where likely you don't know that much, and sometimes in an effort to seem confident, we can seem arrogant, and just remembering that to be humble and to ask questions, and that no one expects you to know everything, and they'll actually think you're smart if you know the right questions to ask, and people that are managing you are probably insecure about about how well they're doing at relaying information to you, so asking those questions is really helpful for them too. Don't gossip is just hear me now and listen to me later, but in the workplace, it can be really easy, in all facets of life, it's really easy to bond through gossip, and it helps bring people together, right, to talk about the people that are annoying, or the people that you don't like. And the fact about gossip is that if people learn that if you'll gossip about other people, you'll gossip about them, they will gossip about you, you get a reputation, and things get much more complicated than they need to be in a workplace. It is so much better to just be a straight shooter and to be kind to people in the workplace. It will make everything so much less complicated, and it will lower your anxiety levels, and it will just sort of pave a smooth path for your career. And put your phone away is just what it sounds like. I can't stress this enough. we're all addicted to our phones. We're all addicted to whatever Snapchat or Instagram or whatever it is that we're doing on our phones or on our devices or on our computers. Just don't do it at work unless it's part of your job, to be a social media editor or something. Just, on your lunch break, when you go to the bathroom, whatever, you can be on your phone, but it it just has no place when you should be doing your job, and it's sort of the first thing that announces that you're not engaged in what's happening in your particular workplace. Are there any questions so far about jobs, about getting jobs, about sort of the things to keep in mind when you first start a job?
Yes.
Feel free to have. Oh, yep.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions regarding networking. So one of them is if networking affects the graduate school admissions process.
I think that networking can affect the graduate admissions process. It depends on what you're going to graduate school for. And networking is such a nebulous word. As I said, like being on social networks and knowing people is really important. I think that when you're applying to graduate school, what really matters is thinking about whether you're ready to make this sort of commitment. It's a huge time commitment. It's time away from the workforce, and it's also a huge financial commitment. And so really having figured out what you want to do before you decide to go to grad school, and knowing that you can always wait and go to grad school later is very important. I think it's really important to make sure that you keep up with your friends from college and your friends from the sorority. These are people that can always help you and give you advice and connect you with other people when it comes to grad school and when it comes to admissions or getting recommendations or getting internships that might set you up better for grad school. So certainly networking is really important.
Great, thank you. We have another question. If you are still unsure about your career path, what is a good job to take to learn valuable skills?
That's a great question. I would say what is most important, I think, and this may sound counterintuitive, is that if you're just taking a job in order to sort of get some skills, you want to take a job with people that you feel you can learn from. So there are lots and lots of entry-level jobs out there, and in some entry-level jobs you're going to be working for somebody who's too busy to mentor you or to help you or to show you the ropes, and you're going to end up sort of sitting at a computer doing work or doing kind of menial tasks. So I'd say, any job that sounds interesting to you, that feel that is an entry-level position, but when you go to interview, really go to that interview ready to ask some questions about not what can you do for me, but what sort of relationship will I have with other people on the team, and will I be able to learn from other team members, or will there be situations in which I'll have an opportunity to grow? And that, I think, having the right personnel working around you, I think, can give you all of the skills that you need. I'm really the practical skills, like any sort of practical skills that have to do with doing an actual job. Let's say you're let's just use waiting tables just as an example, like how to fill up a tray and move the tray and take orders and clear plates. Anybody can learn those in any job, but the actual sort of less obvious things, like I was saying, like showing up on time, like being humble, like being kind to other people, like getting your work done and meeting deadlines and being a person of your word. Those are all the skills that you can get in any job where you have people supporting you, and those are the things that you want to develop in your first job.
Great, and we have one more question in this section of career. What advice would you give to deal with a supervisor who's maybe difficult to work with?
So in situations where you have a boss who is mean or rude, or you feel like they're undermining you or they don't like you, this is really, really tough. And basically you have three choices, and I call these up, over, and out. So your first option is up, which is talking to your boss and talking to your boss directly. This means no gossiping, no sort of, you know, complaining to your friends at work about the situation and trying to figure out if you're right or you're wrong, but going straight to the source and saying, you know, like, listen, here's what I perceive to be happening here. You know, talk to me honestly. How, you know, I'd love to get some honest feedback on my work, or, you know, just can we get a cup of coffee and just talk and sort of try to suss out what's happening. Now, obviously, this can be extremely intimidating, and in many cases, you know, this is just not a possibility. The person is, you know, seems unhinged, they seem unkind, they seem not to have time for you. The other option is to go over, and so in that case, you would go to that person's boss, or you would go to human resources. So this is, you know, something to be handled delicately and always to be handled discreetly, because you know, you're going over or around somebody, and if that person is not the greatest human being in this situation, then you want to kind of make sure that you're being fair. So, and you also want to be mature about it, because what can be really scary in a job is to realize, like, you don't have like a dean, or like in high school you have like a guidance counselor or a parent. When you're in a job, you don't have somebody who you can go and kind of like burst into tears with and be like, but it's so awful and they're so mean. You know, this is generally not how we want to behave at work. So you want to, you know, kind of figure out what you want to say, and like, you know, I'm having difficulty with this person. What do you advise that I do? And try to get some support from elsewhere in your organization. And then the last is out, which is, you know, if you can't seem to get through to the person you're working for, and you can't seem to, you know, talk to their boss or to the human resources department, you want to get out of that situation. And that may mean moving to another department, or it may mean looking for another job. And there's no shame ever in quitting a job. And if it's not working out, it's not working out. You move on. You know, as life is short, and you shouldn't, you know, you should try to make things work in a situation that you feel is workable. But once you've kind of looked into it and decided it's not workable, then off you go. Okay, so let's keep going. So when you're not at work, you need to remember that you are in charge of the way that you spend your time, and when you're at work too. So the best piece of advice that I can give you in every aspect of your life is that you decide when you're not at work that you're going to do yoga, or that you're going to watch TV, or that you're going to do whatever. And when you're at work, you decide who you want to be at work and how you're going to spend your time while you're there, to a certain extent. And whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it, do it well. That's something that, you know, again, sounds simple, but is really important to remember, that like being really excellent at what you do is oftentimes its own reward. So mastering something that's difficult that you didn't think you could do, or getting along with that person you didn't think you could get along with, or you know, showing up and, you know, working late with the team to get whatever project it is done by the deadline. All of these things, working hard, and it feels really good, in the same way that like when you know, like pull an all-nighter and work on a paper and turn it in, feel like, you know what, I actually did a really good job on that, or at least I finished it. Or when you've worked hard, there is this feeling of victory, and you can get that whether it's in your job or in the pursuits that you're taking part in outside of your job. Okay, next up is money and finance. I will try to make this as quick and painless as possible, because no one loves to talk about money and finance. So there are all these annoying labels that are foisted on millennials and Generation Z. The term generation debt has come up. It comes up a lot because student loans are absolutely ridiculous and have hobbled so many recent graduates. And they make being financially responsible, or budgeting, or saving money, they can make it very difficult. And I feel like every graduating class gets told that they're, the most indebted class, and really and truly the class of 2017 is the most indebted class ever. College just keeps getting more and more expensive, and I won't quote numbers to you because they're absolutely staggering and terrifying, and will make you mad. And the thing to always remember is that your education is super duper valuable, and now that you're out in the world, if you have to find a way to pay for it, there you should never ever regret that you got a college education, and that you may or may not have accrued some debt because of that. So the idea of being financially responsible, it sounds really boring. It sounds really dry. It sounds like you're going to be leading this sort of in the sad lifestyle where you're going to be, eating mustard for dinner and wearing your underwear inside out to save money on laundry, or like watering down the orange juice, like being frugal and saving money. It doesn't jibe with the idea of like the young woman freshly graduated from college taking the world by storm. I have some tips for you so that you don't have to be reduced to that type of lifestyle. And these are sort of the non-negotiables, the things that you have to do in order to be financially responsible. It's sort of the bare minimum. Number one is create a budget. And in the Girls Guide, I have a lot of information about that, but luckily there are also so many good apps for creating a budget. I really like Mint. There's also one called You Need a Budget. These are two really, really good apps, and that will walk you through the process of creating a budget. The second thing you have to do is stick to that budget. So when you make a budget, the most important thing to do is to be realistic, about how much money you have coming in, how much money you need to spend on the expenses in your life, and then once you've sort of locked it in, that you're just really true to what you've set out to do. Because sticking to a budget is being a person of your word to yourself and having integrity with yourself, and makes you into somebody that you can trust, which is really important as far as building your confidence and making you feel good about yourself. And it's so much bigger than just having money in the bank. Number three is check your credit report. This could not be more important right now. If you've been keeping up on the news, there was just a ridiculous data breach with one of the three main credit reporting agencies, Equifax, and a lot of people's data was stolen, 143 million people. So keep an eye on your credit report. You can go to freecreditreport.com and get copies of your credit reports from all three major credit reporting agencies. If you see anything weird, if you see it says you had a late payment on a credit card and you never did, it says you have a hospital bill from something that you never, you've never been to the hospital, then you need to go through the process of getting that fixed and making sure that your credit report accurately reflects your spending. You should, I'll just skip the next one and say you should get a credit card and use it responsibly. Get a credit card, don't max it out, spend, again, within your budget, and pay it off in full every month. That's really important so that you get credit, and you need credit in order to buy a house or buy a car, or have one of those credit reports at those credit reporting agencies. When you get your credit card bill, ideally you're paying it off in full. Excuse me. At the very, very least, you have to pay the minimum on your credit card every month. No question about it. You can't ever, ever miss a credit card payment. And I say a lot more about this in the book, but just trust me on that one. Don't miss a payment. You have to open a retirement account. And this seems like the most boring thing to think about, especially if you're 22, even if you're 32 or 42, or maybe even 52. You feel like, how am I supposed to save money right now? In a lot of jobs, there are retirement accounts that are part of your benefits package, and you should really look into those. You don't have to put a lot of money in there. You could put $20 per paycheck into your retirement account now if that's all that you can do, and it will just continue to multiply over the course of your life. So put just a tiny bit in now, but open it. The amount of money that you save opening a retirement account in your 20s versus in your 30s is the difference between like uh, a life where you're scrimping and saving in retirement to one where you're very comfortable. And then just be responsible and be respectful with your money, and that all comes back to creating a budget and sticking to it, and spending your money, thinking before you spend money on things that mean something to you. Um, I say think of budgeting like dieting. It's there are many points of view on this, but essentially with dieting, you keep track of what you take in and you keep track of how much you exercise, and then you figure out what the right amount of energy is for you. It's the same thing with money. You think of how much you're taking in, how much you're putting out, and you adjust as needed in order to have the money that you need. Are there any questions about money and finances?
Yes, we have a couple questions, really just expanding on what we're currently talking about, and that is what's important, most important things to set up and register for, like a 401k or insurance, and what factors do you consider when doing so?
So it's the most important thing is to set up a bank account. Certainly, you probably have one already, but to have a savings account and a checking account, not just a checking account or not just a savings account. Your savings account is where you're going to put the money that you're saving, and you could open one at the bank and put a portion of each paycheck into your savings account and don't touch it. And then the checking account is, for your expenses, for paying your rent, for shopping and dining out and all of those things. So you should, at the very minimum, open those two accounts and sort of make a deal with yourself that you're not going to touch the money in the savings account. And the other thing, as I said, is to open a retirement account. If you don't have a job that offers a 401k, which is a particular kind of retirement account, there are retirement accounts that you can get through any bank called IRAs. And they allow you to put up to a certain amount of money into them per year. There are two different kinds of retirement accounts. Some of them come out of your pre-tax dollars, so they would come out of your paycheck before taxes are taken out, and then you would pay the taxes way down the road when you retire. And there are others that come out of your post-tax salary, and for those you would put the money in, and then you would never pay any more taxes on them. So I would say that those are the main things. Complicated investments, financial instruments like stocks and bonds, those aren't for beginners. Those are, once you have a little bit of money to play with, then you can sort of think about investing, but those are sort of the basic accounts.
Great, and we have one more question regarding finance, and that is, how do you decide whether you should live at home to save money, for a bit, or keep living with people your age to kind of keep your momentum?
I would say that, it's pretty tough out there. And if you have a good relationship with your family and you're inclined to move home because in order to save money, even if it's just for a few months after graduation, there's absolutely no shame in it, and it's perfectly acceptable. I think that sooner or later you want to be paying your own rent. It's all has to do with what I was talking about before about self-respect and confidence, and you just don't get that when you're living at home with your family. So I would say that it really depends on how much money you're making and if you can afford it, and also what kind of relationship you have with your parents. Is it going to strain the relationship for you to be moving home? You should think about things like, and I talk about this in the book, and about potentially paying rent, even if it's just a tiny bit of rent to your parents, just so that it keeps your familial and intimate relationship with them separate from what is essentially a business relationship, which is you staying with them for a limited period of time while you save up enough money to go live on your own. I'm happy to answer more questions about that, but I think that it really depends on how much you're making and your relationship with your parents. Okay, we'll keep going. What's a 401k and who could ever run that far? We sort of touched on that. It's a retirement account that's applied by your employer. It's not like a 5K race, and it refers to part of the tax code, Section 401, whatever. And it basically says that you put a certain amount of money into an account that will accrue interest at a certain rate, and there are certain rules about when you can take that money out. And if you take it out before I think it's currently 69 and a half, you pay a very steep penalty. So but the money is invested for you in stocks or in indexes that you choose when you set it up, and then you pretty much don't touch it until it's time to retire. A little bit about credit cards. I think we've sort of covered that. They're kind of the gateway drug to all other kinds of debt if you don't pay them off. So remember, you want to be paying it off in full. At the very least, you're paying the minimum. And I believe that no one really needs more than one credit card. There are some instances where that's not true, but I feel pretty strongly about that. Sally Mae is not a poor farm girl. This we had talked about a little bit before about student loan debt. There are lots and lots of plans. Sally Mae sounds like it's somebody in like a gingham pinafore who just wants you to pay off your loans. It's actually a private corporation that buys up student loans and can be pretty rough on you if you don't pay them. So check out your options when it comes to paying back student loan debt. There are a lot of different options, including options that are income dependent, so that you pay a little bit now and you commit to paying more when you're making more money. And that's how I paid off my loans, by sort of estimating that within a certain number of years I'd be able to pay more, and so that I wouldn't have to pay a lot up front. There's also refinancing. There are a lot of different options so that you don't default on paying your loans. No matter how much you're making, I just want to say a little bit about like the mentality of abundance versus scarcity. When we feel like we don't have enough, that we're living beyond our means, that we can't do the things that we want to do, we can get very clenched. And that kind of mentality of scarcity can be sort of pervade every aspect of our lives, so that we start to feel, kind of frugal with our affections, with our friends, or we feel like we feel angry and we feel small and we feel like our possibilities are limited, versus abundance, which is a mentality where it's like, maybe I'm not making as much money as I want to make, but I have enough. And if I feel like I don't have enough, like, how can I change my life in order to save a bit more money without getting, too freaked out about it? Like looking at things, sort of with a wide view, with a view of wanting to have enough and seeing yourself in a position where you do have enough, and knowing that if your friend gets the job and you don't, or if somebody has a partner and you don't, that it's not a zero-sum game and there is enough for everybody. And sort of being generous in all parts of your life, not just having to do with money, will be really really benefit you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about friendship, unless there are any questions that have come in about finances. Okay.
I don't believe we don't have anything further on finance.
Okay, great. One of the things that you find when you graduate college is that your friendships change. They change a lot, and the people that you've been friends with since you were very young start to change. You change, and hopefully your friendships are flexible. That they can accommodate the ways in which that you change, the ways in which you both change. Like, and it's possible that you get really into the arts and your friend becomes an investment banker, and you suddenly have absolutely nothing in common, and when you go out for drinks it's very strained and it just feels like a chore. And sometimes we end up letting friends go. Ideally, we should expect our friends to change. We should let them change, and not expect them to be the same person that they were when we lived in the dorm together, or when we were in middle school. And the changes happen really, really rapidly in the years after college as everyone is sort of trying to figure out who they are and what they're going to do with their lives. Um, uh, it's important to sort of distinguish between your friends, like those actual friends. I would say probably, if you're on this call, that your Kappa sisters versus friends, your followers online, the people that you kind of uh, you follow them on Instagram, you leave cute emoji comments, but you don't actually have real relationships with them. Obviously these two groups overlap, but it's important that you really sort of identify who those true friends are, the ones who really know you, the ones who you could go to in a time of crisis and would always be there for you, and make sure you're not spending all of your time online, whether talking to random people that you met on Twitter or whatever it is. Just keep in touch with those real friends and really make sure that you continue to cultivate those relationships. That goes for when you're dating as well, that you, and this is something I don't have to say to you, but we want to make sure that you're a girl's girl, right? Or that your friends come before your romantic relationships, or your friends are prioritized alongside your romantic relationships. The older you get, it may not seem like it now when you're in your 20s, the sort of large friend group and the feeling that every new friend you make has a whole friend group of theirs, and those are your friends too. As people get older, they couple off, they have families, and they often neglect their friendships. And you can't conceive of it when you're really young, but when you're older, you witness it and you think like, friendships actually require care and tending. So just keep that in mind. Your friends can also sort of be your chosen family. It's possible that you live far away from your family. It's possible that you don't have a great relationship with your family, or that you don't get to spend as much time with them as you want to. Wherever you are, think of putting together that chosen family from the friends that you have and creating rituals with those people, whether it's a Friendsgiving or, that you have brunch once a month, or if it's your friends live far away, that you Skype or you G-chat, frequently, or whatever it is that you have, you keep up these relationships and that you cultivate this kind of family. It's just so important. Any questions about friendships?
So we have some questions about just how to get into a rhythm of life after college and to make and keep a routine. Not
right.
Specific, but
yeah, this can be really difficult, and a lot of times, especially if you don't have a job yet that sort of creates a routine for you and you're used to having like your class schedule dictate your time, it can be really tough. So if you're trying to figure out what your routine is, I think the best thing to do is sort of identify what you want to get done each day, the things that you are going to plan to do every day, whether that's exercise or meditate or go for a walk or whatever these things are, or you're going to be doing some hardcore looking for a job online, and putting those things into a schedule. Even though you don't have to exercise at 9 in the morning, and you don't have to spend the hours from 11 to 3 with a break for lunch looking for a job, scheduling those things and setting up routines like that is really helpful in sort of giving your days a rhythm and giving your days meaning. Think about whether or not you're a morning person. Think about giving yourself a bedtime when you're not out with friends or whatever, that you generally tend to go to bed by midnight or whatever that is, so that you can get up because you really like getting up early and getting a head start on the day. So really just literally writing out or typing out the hours of the day and filling them in with the things you wish to do each day, and kind of formulating a week around that can be really, really helpful.
Great. We had another question come in about what are the best ways to meet new people, make new connections, especially if you're in a new town after graduation.
Hmm. So the organization Meetup is fantastic, and it's been around for probably over a decade now. And if you go to meetup.org online, you can find meetup groups in pretty much every town, or if you're not in a big city, a town near where you live, um, with people that have similar interests to you. The internet really is the place to sort of meet people. There are also so many groups on Facebook, whether or not you're super into Facebook. I'm, once you connect with your friends on there, you find that they're involved in different local groups, and or they can direct you to different groups. A great resource is also your alumni association. Certainly, they're probably set up in all major cities, depending on the school that you went to. You have to make yourself go out and go to these events, and it can be really scary. But you know this is what's essential as far as putting yourself out there, and trying to make new friends. You can go, you can stay for 15 minutes if you don't like it, and then go home. um, another great way to make friends is certainly through your sorority network, and also obviously through your job. You want to sort of figure out who your fellow travelers are in the workplace, and you can certainly make friends through them. If you feel like you can't find anybody, make sure that you have, talk to people in your social network from college and ask people. Make sure you find out if anybody knows anybody and would set you up on a friend date. They can be enormously helpful as well.
Great, thank you.
Sure. A little bit about getting along with your family while you're figuring out who you are. One of the things that happens when you grow up is that you start to sort of see your parents as human beings, and your parents have to see you as a human being as well. So your parents, when you're young, they're like superheroes as well. They should be. They take care of you, and whether or not you always agree with them, they're in this position of authority, and so they seem to have this, they have this really outsized importance in your life, and you don't see them like you see your friends, certainly, or other even other people's parents. Your parents have always been human, and this is something that you start to realize more and more as you get older, that you may disagree with them on things. You may have different political views. You may feel like they did a really crummy job parenting you in some ways, and this can be really painful to come to terms with. And I don't know if you're ever really like an equal with your parent, but just sort of actually when you realize those things, when you realize oh, my relationship with these people is complicated, and these are human beings. Go easy on yourself and go easy on them. By the same token, you are, in your parents' eyes, to some extent, always the little girl that they cooed over in the crib. And even though you're now you've graduated, you're on your own, you are dating, you pay your own rent, whatever it is, you have a job, you are a full-grown adult, and when you're not around your family, you're very much an independent, grown-up woman. When you get around your parents, it's very easy to sort of regress, and also your parents sort of treat you like you're a child again. So you kind of have to renegotiate your relationship with them. And that's really hard, and sort of working on this together is really important, and understanding that there are ways in which you're going to get closer, and there are ways in which you're going to, as adults, all of you, differ, and that's okay too. You're no longer sort of their ward or their property the way that parent and child sometimes feel, like the child does what the parent says, and there's no arguing with that. Just like you cultivate your relationships with your friends, you want to cultivate your relationships with your siblings. Your siblings are the only people who have the same experience that you do, or know all these people that you do, of your heritage. They know who your parents are. They know who you were and who you've become. It's just really, really if you don't have close relationship with your siblings, and it is possible to do that, it's worth making the effort. It's worth reaching out, because the things that you have in common with them and the shared experiences that you likely have, depending on your situation, are never ever going to be replicable with just your friends. Um, so we've said this, you're an adult, but to your family, you're still the little girl in the puffy astronaut snowsuit who went by the nickname Kitty and got blue poster paint all over the white duvet. We said a little bit about your parents still seeing you as a child, and also, when you go home and see your family again, it's very easy to regress and to sort of act like that child, or act like the little kid who got in trouble, or to, all of a sudden feel like you've become an infant again. And a good thing to do if you're sort of in that situation, the holidays are coming up, we go home and things get complicated like that, make sure you have friends who know you as an adult, who you're keeping in touch with, that you can text or reach out to and sort of remind you of who you are and keep you grounded. And as you kind of feel like a little kid again, and sometimes that can feel really good, like that your mom is fixing you dinner while you're watching TV, and other times it can feel not great if you feel like your parents aren't seeing you for the adult that you are. We talked about this, that moving home does not make you a loser, and we talked a little bit about getting along with your parents while you do that, the idea of potentially having a lease or some kind of ground rules. In the Girls Guide, I talk a bit about that. I talk about it at length, because it's really important that you are still sort of individuating and getting on with your process of becoming an adult, even if you're living with your parents. So how to be a good daughter is something that you probably never had to think about before. But when you're no longer living with your parents, or living close to your parents or your family, you want to make sure that you're keeping in touch with them. They miss you. They think about you. All of these really exciting things are happening in your life, and it's important to, just. And for some of you, this is not needed at all, that you have this tight relationship with your family and you call your mom several times a day. For others, it can be really easy to forget to touch base with your parents, or forget to update them, or forget that they miss you, and that you can just send them a card because you're thinking about them, or you can text them and tell them you love them. And while you're becoming sort of a good human being, remember that you are still a daughter, and that your family really wants to hear from you. So I'm going to wrap up. So if you have any questions on any other topics, please ask me. Really, what I would like to say, though, in closing, is that you've got a lot of living to do. You have a lot of life ahead of you, and this is a really, really exciting time. And you should just do your best, even when things feel like they're just so crazy, or there's so many unknowns, to try to enjoy as much of it as you can. There's really no, aside from like breaking the law or really hurting somebody's feelings, there's really like being cruel to others. There are very few major missteps that you're likely to make if you're kind of being aware and really striving to do well. And so, like I said before, the job that you take, or the person that you date, or the fight that you get into with your friend, or the apartment you didn't get, or whatever that is, like all of these things, they feel very, very large, but really like you're on your way, and it's all so very exciting. And just be grateful. Be grateful you have this incredible opportunity, and that you're, you get to live in the 21st century and kind of do the work of figuring out what you want to be. That's a huge privilege, and it's super exciting. I'm really excited for you, and I wish you the best of luck on your way. If you have any questions, tweet me. You can follow me at Melissa Kirsch, and you can also, if you don't have a copy of the Girls Guide, you can get it at any book purveyor near you or online.
Great. Melissa, we still have a few questions, if
Great.
that's okay.
Uh-huh.
So, could you maybe give some tips on how parents can support their daughters who are recent graduates and they've become these adults, and some tips that you can give on whether they're living at home, how the parent can work with that adult, or if they're just being able to be supportive if they're outside the home?
Yeah, I think that what I was saying before about recognizing that your daughter is an adult is could be really, really tough. It it seems amazing that they've grown up this quickly. It also it feels almost unfair sometimes. I've heard parents tell me, that they have to let go in this way, or it seems like they should have access to their kids, thoughts and what they're doing, and a closeness that they're sort of entitled to as parents. And to a certain extent that's true, and to another extent it's very much untrue. You raised these incredible people to this incredible daughters to go off and live their incredible lives independently of you. And so that kind of supporting them, and still, you'll always be their parents, you'll always be there to give them advice if needed, but that you're also really taking seriously how important your opinion is to them, and that they need to take risks, they need to make choices for themselves, they need to mess up, they need to fail, and they need to know that you're there for them. And even just saying that, saying, I trust you, I believe in you, and I'm here for you, is incredibly valuable to to children at any age. And even if you're a parent, that hearing that at any age in your life from your parents is an incredible boost of confidence, and knowing that people are still going to love you no matter what, is incredibly powerful. So that support, that if you need us, we're here, but I trust you, you make good decisions, or I'm here, or I'd love to give you some advice, can I give you some advice? And being ready, depending on the situation, to hear, like, what, I'd rather not have that advice, or not assuming that you even if you do know better, in some situations, you just have to let your kids make their own decisions and figure it out for themselves. And it's possible that they do actually know what's best for them, and it may not be what you choose for them, but it will actually work out.
Great, thank you. And then we have one final question. What is the number one piece of advice for a grad who has been in the real world for 5 months?
Been in the real world for five whole months. The number one piece of advice is be grateful. That I said that before, but it's really huge when things are busy or chaotic, or you're not sure what comes next. Pause for a second and just look at your life and think of the things that are really exciting and going well for you, or that you're just lucky for, and expressing the gratitude to people that you're grateful for, or just sort of taking note, if you're writing it down, or just making a note to yourself that, like, what, today I'm just really, really grateful for for my job, or I'm really grateful that I have such, like, a really awesome best friend, or I'm just so grateful for my cat, or I'm so grateful that it's not raining anymore, or whatever it is. We forget so easily to value and to recognize the really wonderful things that we have, and we're always so caught up in striving and what we want and our ambitions for ourselves, and we can easily miss what is happening right now in this moment.
Great, thank you. Those are all the questions that we have.
Great, well, thank you so much.
So thank you to our presenter, Melissa, for leading the session this evening, and thank you for your participation If you have any further question about tonight's topic, you may email Melissa or you can tweet her, actually. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.